So, welcome this morning at our podcast, the Millennial Talk. That's the name right now, right?
Exactly.
Nice. Today we have a really special guest. We are,
The one and only Thomas Blekman.
Thomas Blekman is his name, and he is the dean and the founder of the Global School for Entrepreneurship. And could you give yourself a little bit an introduction about yourself?
Like you said, co-founder and dean of Global School. Prior to that, I started teaching at Erasmus University, where I became a clinical professor. Clinical has nothing to do with white jackets and stethoscopes.
That was my next question.
It's too lazy to do a PhD, but really valuable in practice. So that's what I was at Erasmus University. Part-time. At the same time, I was an entrepreneur doing leadership and executive development, and started working with Timo at a University of Applied Sciences. And then we thought, well, we can do so much better than the current accredited programs. Let's start our own University of Applied Science and get our own program accredited. And now we have an accredited entrepreneurship bachelor. In which we help students like you to really be an entrepreneur from day one and facilitate you guys in an incubator. And as a fallback scenario, have a bachelor degree. So it's the other way around.
How long did it took you from going to working in the university to starting your own university? Was it like a long process, or?
Yeah, I started as an entrepreneur in 2005.
Okay.
And I started teaching at Erasmus University 2006.
Okay, so that was pretty.
And we bought an existing University of Applied Sciences that was established in 1986, just last year.
Okay, so the process was like you bought it last year, and like how long did it took you to like talk with Timo and Hendrik? From going Timo, from like the idea of doing a university to actually buying the university.
That went rather fast. Yeah. I remember having a coffee with Timo and Rocky, my dog, was at the time a puppy. And so we started two men and a dog. That was the year before in October. So
October 2017.
Oh shit.
No.
That's really fast.
Yeah, 17. Yeah, time flies when you're having fun.
In April 2018, the university was bought, and you were
March. Yeah,
March. Okay.
March 18, and then we had the program ready and the panel visit for the accreditation in September.
Okay.
Last year, and we started running with the first students who entered the Global School of Entrepreneurship before it was accredited. But now the accreditation is all set.
Okay. Fake it until you make it, right?
No. We were absolutely open about that. No, the credits now go to the students who trusted us to really deliver on our promises. And of course, because we had the panel visit on the September 4th.
Oh, okay.
And we started the Monday after that visit with the students, but they enrolled knowing that we would pull it off. You know, Timo has a lot of experience on establishing universities of applied sciences. He was the founder of the new business school in Amsterdam that was sold to Nijrode, and also established another university in Amsterdam.
Yeah, so he was.
He that's also why we teamed up. And I knew Hendrik from my Erasmus because he's founder of the Erasmus Center for Entrepreneurship. So what you see in the three of us. We bring together a lot of knowledge and capabilities, but also differing expertise.
Exactly.
And therefore, we were able to go so fast.
Nice. Well, we come back later to this, and we will because it's really interesting. Because I was at last time like 1 month ago. I was at the Erasmus University. I spoke there to a guy, and he was saying. Yeah, I was saying, do you know Thomas Blekman? And he said, yeah, of course I know. He's a little bit crazy, right? I said, yeah, he's a little bit crazy, I think. He's a professor.
Now I want to know who that was.
Yeah, I will tell you that later.
Watch out, students.
but it was in a good way, because he says you need to be really crazy when you want to start your own school. on a really different way, and it's not a normal way, right? It's totally crazy when you compare it with the normal system. So that was why he says he needs to be a little bit crazy. So what I want to know, you were a bit crazy, and what was the thing? Do you also, you have a personality, a kind of a personality. How does it form their way until you grow up, and are you always a little bit different in that kind of sense?
No. That's the short answer. Let me explain. The crazy to me is a perception by others.
Of course, yeah.
That's always something a lunatic says, right?
Yeah.
But what I see is that we were really creative and we had a vision. I would never have been able to start the university as it is without having the experience of teaching entrepreneurship, having established a company in leadership and executive development, and so everything for me comes together, and it's just a normal incremental step forward. So it's not something that we just envisioned and we did. It's incremental. It's step by step by step by step, and this was so logical to me that it seems crazy to others because it's so different.
Yeah.
But to me, it was just a small incremental step. So that's responding to the crazy.
Yeah, because you are kind of doing the same thing, but for a corporate, right? You are training them like in entrepreneurship, how to be an entrepreneur and how to be a good entrepreneur, if that makes sense. So you just took these skills and this knowledge and you applied it to a university for a new entrepreneur and students.
And that's what I started doing in 2006.
Yeah.
So I have over 12 years experience, almost 13 years in doing exactly that. That's why I teach I taught at Erasmus part-time.
Okay, you're still teaching
at 2006, and I still do.
Okay,
but now for executive education. So because I want to keep building my corporate network for you guys as entrepreneurs. For instance, if you look at Jelle, who's now in the process of developing the drink, I can introduce him to a company that's the world's largest bottler. And I can do so because Sunday I fly to Florida and do an executive education for that company. I do a training there for RSM for that exact same company. And therefore I can establish the relationship with the people in the room. There's actually people in the lab that I wanted to introduce him to that are in that group. So by keep teaching every now and then in a corporate, I can keep building my network for you guys. And I think that's a really important asset in education, because it opens education system to the actual real world.
Yeah, I think it's one of the main issue when you're just starting and are pretty young, is that your network is pretty limited. You don't know a lot of people in your industry yet, because it's pretty hard to go out there and I mean, it's not hard, but like it takes time to build a huge network and a big network and a valuable network. So I think that's very interesting. I mean, that's also why we do this podcast. It's so that we can bring guests on that are like
interesting,
very interesting, and that we want to talk with.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
And that's also what makes us different as a school. Because with Hendrik having a network in over 120 countries with Get in the Ring, where he has a network of investors, of entrepreneurs, of startup hubs, even governments, we can help you and connect you to those networks. The same is for me with the corporate background. Timo is actually in a foundation for corporate universities. So we have access to those, and I think there are 80 of them now collected in a community. So what we really find important is also to work with consultants that are willing to open their network. And that's something that I realized when I was teaching at other universities, that they either have limited network or they really are safeguarding their network and they're not opening it up.
But why? Why do they do that? Because they're afraid of like connecting wrong students, or
that they ruin their network, that they send people there and then destroy the relationship. So it's safeguarding, it's protecting. And at the other hand, if you look at a lot of common practice universities, it's all theoretical. The internship to me is a repair tool to a lack of external and practicality. So if you send someone into your network without having any practical experience, what's he going to do, or she? So that's why we open that up from the beginning. And my experience is that you guys accelerate when we open up our network.
And are you never afraid of the fact that some people could destroy your network?
No, they never have.
Why?
Because it's a scare. They're fearing something that's not there.
Yeah, maybe.
Because everybody in my network knows that I work with young entrepreneurs who are ambitious, who still need to learn. And if I also think that people who have a like-minded attitude and mindset connect. If you're really negative and then you like talking to people who are negative and critical and well, I'm not that type of person. So my network, I connect to people who are not. I don't find people who are. I don't find interesting. So they're not in my network.
Yeah.
So I don't have that risk.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Like,
not everything goes well.
Yeah, of course. It's life. Like it's
exactly.
Like, it cannot always be positive and everything works great. But so, like, for example, what's the value that when you send someone, like a student, to someone of your network, in your network, what's the value for them? You see what I mean?
For the people in my network?
Yeah.
Getting new ideas, getting new insights, and also feeling a sense of purpose. Everybody likes helping out others.
That is true.
Yeah. And it's just something that's undervalued, or what? How do I call this? That people just they look at the downside and not at the upside. And if you ask people for help, everybody's willing to help.
Yeah.
Or if they don't, you don't want their help. So
if they don't, they don't, and then they're not in my network.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, and a little bit about your younger years.
Younger years.
What was your kind of
what kind of kids were you? Were you like the entrepreneur kid, the kid, the quiet?
To be honest, and it's almost like the general entrepreneur story. I've always been fiddling around with entrepreneurship, but to be honest, I have, and I also have postponed it for the wrong reasons.
Why? What are the wrong reasons?
Not having an idea. Thinking that I have to make my mistakes at the corporate first. All these things. I'm creating entrepreneurship education I wish I had myself. Nobody taught me that by postponing that, you only lose time in value creation. Nobody taught me that. I was educated in the sense like, go work for a corporate, have a corporate career, learn there, and then you'll become experienced, and then you can start your own business. I wish I would have started way earlier.
That's an interesting point, because indeed a lot of people saying this, like, yeah, you can better work for like 10 years for a corporate, and then you know how things work in corporates and how companies are structured.
Yep.
How do you look on that? Because of course, when you work at first for some companies, you know how things work, and you know how you could do sales, or how you know more about the companies themselves and how that world works. And when you're just leaving high school, you don't know that.
I agree. If we would keep high school and education as it is, because there we have a problem. We have a problem that there is a lack of practicality and outside in from the real world in education. Therefore, if you go into a program and then you graduate, then you still don't know. And then you cannot become an entrepreneur because you still don't know. And the value creation takes time.
Yeah.
So a lot of entrepreneurs start, but within a year, they go find a job because they can't cope with the cash flow problem. Then they go into a career, they make money, they save or not, but they gain experience. And then they have everything sorted so that they can try the jump. But a lot of people are aspiring entrepreneurs who are now working in an existing company because they don't know how. What we are changing with entrepreneurship education is that we are offering you 4 years of practicality in our program, so that you can fiddle around, figure out, gain experience. When you leave our school, you have 4 years of entrepreneurial experience.
So it's kind of like
it's pulling the period from after the education into the education.
That's where I was going. So instead of going like for a 4-year degree or like a 4 year of education and then having 4 years of trial and errors in entrepreneurship, you do that while you study.
Exactly, because we can afford the 4 years after education.
Yeah, I mean, those years are like pretty valuable because usually you start working, you make your own money, you start establishing your family, and then you have like responsibilities. So it's way harder to quit your job and become an entrepreneur from like one day to another. And like we wanted to talk about that as well. How did you cope from being an employee and like being an employee? Like how did you cope switching from being an employee to being an entrepreneur? Was that a hard
especially when you have a family and stuff? Every step it's way more difficult.
I know,
because you are making it way easier for us because it's like during our studies, but for you, how was it? How did you cope with that?
Well, the thing was, I have to remember he just told me that someone called me crazy, and this is a crazy story.
I want to hear it.
Well, at the time I was working within ING. I was making good money in being product and change manager. I was doing all these innovative projects. I was having fun, but at ING at the time, you would work 36 hours a week. And I was already making days that were beyond the expected hours. And I thought, well, if I can bring that back to 4 days a week, I have 1 day off. And then in that day off, I can start my own company, which is called a secondary job if you apply for it. You have to organize it because you're employed. You have to request for a secondary job.
Okay.
I did that at ING, and the problem was that just a month or two before I applied for that secondary job, someone got into the newspaper, into the news from ING. It was someone working in IT, and he got into the newspaper because he was producing porn on the servers from ING. And then the management said, or leadership, this was way up, said, no more secondary jobs, quit that shit.
I could imagine.
So when I requested, my wife being a lawyer and telling me, please formalize this, not being an entrepreneur yet, still wanting to become one, I requested that. My off the record advice with secondary jobs is first make it work, then request it. But the thing was that they denied it, and I was not allowed to start my secondary job.
Okay.
Then I sent an email to the CEO of ING, and I asked him, well, look, the prior CEO, when I did my, let me one step back. What I wanted to do was already work with a measurement scale on entrepreneurship, and I wanted to do consulting and trainings. So at the time I was already working on that. I had graduated from Erasmus University, which I did part-time, to really start helping others with entrepreneurship. And I requested a secondary job, so that I could start doing that. And in my research, I had talked to Ewald Kist. He was the CEO at the time when I did the research. And he said, wow, if this really works, come back and talk to me, because then you can start measuring our top 100 people, and we can see what we can apply of this within ING. He left. Within half a year after my talk, had nothing to do with it, was not related, but the promise might have been. He knew that he never would have to back up his promise, because he knew that he was already leaving. But the new CEO was Tilman, and I sent him an email. That's why I had to explain this part. I said, well, your prior CEO told me to come back and do a measurement of 200 for 200 or 100 top executives. And now I request a secondary job, and people you lead are telling me I'm not allowed. So I wanted to make a statement like, what's up with this? I wanted to see if I could still get my go ahead. No response for 2 weeks. And then I send another email saying, well, you expect me to answer to people and within a considerable time and a normal time. And this in 2 weeks, I haven't heard anything. Within 5 minutes, I got a call and I could hear by the voice of the person who called. Apparently the CEO has someone doing his email.
Okay.
At the strategy and marketing department. And I could hear by his voice that he was like, oh shit, I forgot all about this email, blushing probably. And I said, well, can you get me into contact with the department of HR to negotiate and to this a deal so that we can sort this out. And to my surprise, I got the email. So now I had an email from the CEO telling, figure this out, get to a conclusion, and do this negotiation. And then I had the opportunity to write my own exit plan.
But did they give you this opportunity because they kind of mess up with your secondary job application?
But I think so. I think they okay, just send the email and then it's done. But it allowed me to write my own exit plan from ING. And so I wrote a plan limiting my hours from 36 to 24 to 16 over a period of 2 years.
So from 4 days to 3 days to 2 days,
2
right?
days,
okay,
yeah.
cool.
And so I now I had more time to also build up my hours outside of ING. And I found a company, the Beukelaar Group, through Edwin de Beukelaar, who's still my mentor. And if they call me crazy, it's because of him, because he really inspired me how to look creatively and how to take a different perspective than most other people. He'd been mentoring me since 2005, and that's how I actually left ING and became an entrepreneur. Long answer, but it's a story that is not simple to explain. But that's how I ended up in being an entrepreneur. So I had to decide to leave a job with a great income to allow and become comfortable with the uncertainty of not knowing. And this is a big threshold. But if you can lower the hours and then give yourself time to grow into a new job as an entrepreneur. Because to me, actually, everybody's an entrepreneur. We just have different financial business models.
What do you mean by that?
No, one has an income, the other sends invoices. At the end of the day, we all need to be relevant.
Yeah, true.
Otherwise, you get fired.
If you don't bring value to the company you work for, then you're useless and
you don't proceed anymore, or you're the next batch that goes out.
Yeah.
So everybody to me is an entrepreneur, and an income is a business model.
Okay, interesting. And like, when you look for entrepreneurship advice and like a different way of becoming an entrepreneur on internet and on Google and like all the social media platform, there's a lot of people saying that you need to find a mentor. How did you find yours, and how did that help you growing into the person you are now? Because he's still mentoring you, you told us?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you mean by that exactly? How, like, what kind of relationship it is?
It's I've been working with Edwin since 2006.
Is it like you and us? Like you were a mentor of us? Is it the same?
Yeah. When I started with him, I had no entrepreneurial experience whatsoever. Okay. I was thinking corporate, like linear planning, and I always knew that it had to be done differently. That's why I started studying entrepreneurship and started coming up with methods and tools. But it was only until 2013 that it actually took off. So I have this period from 2006 to 2013 where he continuously challenged me, mentored me, put me in the deep end with customers. He did that from day one, put me in front of customers, trusting him also with his network. So he had a leadership development program, and he just put me in front. And what I did to you guys, he did to me. And so I know it works because I know what it did to me. So taking Martijn with me to Erasmus, having him coach entrepreneurs where he's doubting that he can be valuable to entrepreneurs, because he still doesn't have his own startup, I put him in front to challenge his assumption, because that's what Edwin did to me. He helped me validate assumptions in his way by just doing and putting me in front, and that helped me a lot.
Like, how did you find him? It was because you were working at ING, and
I was at the time. I was I got into this talent development program at ING, and they had their own business school.
Okay.
And Edwin at the time was one of the providers of the program, and we immediately had this click. We had this business challenge where we had to create a new product or come up with a concept.
Okay.
And the hosts of the program told us, this is just a learning experience. Don't be afraid. And I was offended. I was like, we are
what do
here,
you mean?
We are like here as talents of an organization. Why would this be only learning experience? Why not for real? And I stood in front of the group when we had to pitch our initial idea so that others could choose. And I had a concept, and I said, I don't know if this will be the concept that we end up with, but whoever joins me needs to be in it for the real deal and not just for the learning experience. I really want to achieve this. And it was actually a year and a half later when we had actually developed it, that the director of the venturing at ING won a prize from UNICEF with my concept because he was my boss at the time.
So he took all the credits for your work.
He took the credits and he flew to Brazil and got a trip for UNICEF.
Wow.
It was a charity credit card. Oh.
Okay, cool. So you didn't find your mentor on purpose, right? You were
No. So I was in that program, and Edwin was in that program as a teacher, and I thought, holy shit, this is the way I would like to train and do workshops. He has this capability, he has this skill. This is, if I could get only 10% of the way he is in the group, and if I could learn from him. So I stepped forward and I approached him while he was drinking a coffee during a break, and I said, Edwin, can I talk to you? Because I have this thing figured out on entrepreneurship in a corporate environment. Can you help me develop a training out of this? And I was thinking at the time, have a meeting, a safe environment, do some sketching, talk to him, build my network, that type of thing.
Okay.
But he immediately grabbed his phone and he called someone and he said, well, I'm here with, and then Thomas Blekman.
What's your name?
Yeah, Thomas Blekman, and he's going to do your 360 measurement, man. And I will give him your details, and then you guys can figure this out. And then he hung up.
Jeez.
And I was like,
Fuck.
what just happened here? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was like, so I left to because when you have fear and then you you flight, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, get the hell out of here. But then I turned around and said, when is this exactly? And he said, you're still time. I think it's Monday evening. And it was Thursday afternoon at the time. And in that weekend, I actually had my barbecue to celebrate my graduation. So he put me in front, and that group, I did my measurement scale, I did the feedback, the reporting, and then one of the participants, I will never forget his name, Ron Dille, he came back to me and said, this is a tool I've been looking for so long. I want to do a full-fledged program around this tool. And then I thought, okay, I can do this now myself, but then I'll probably crash and burn. So let me go back to the Berkeley group, who gave me the opportunity in the first place, and say, well, I want to do the measurement of this program. You can have the revenue of the program. I just want to be paid for doing my part, but I want to be in the design phase. I want to be in the execution with the groups. I want to learn. I want you to teach me. I will do this as my investment into my own learning.
Okay.
So I gave back revenue, and we've been working like that ever since.
So you first give, and then you receive.
Yeah, there's actually a partner, Edmond Uffner. He also went with teams to the North Pole, and he achieved that. And he has, when he talks about this, he has this wrapping paper from a retail store that does no longer exist, the V&D, and it says give and receive, not a giving and taking, but giving and receiving. And this is a fundamental orientation. Also with my network, people who are open and giving, I will definitely be good for and help them out in another moment. And because I give them, I also receive. So it's not something you give because you're expecting to receive.
Yeah, and if people feel like it, then they will be like.
It's a mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you bring each other further. That's basically what you do.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
That's humans. Like if you don't cooperate,
humans in a good
die.
way.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, unfortunately, not all.
We're social animals, so like that's how we operate, and that's how we grew to where we are now. Okay, awesome. We also because right now we're in the module of brilliance of failure.
Yeah.
We wanted to talk about your failure as well, maybe, because we know you had some.
Oh, definitely.
And we wanted to talk about that because we think it's very interesting and very, very valuable for us as new entrepreneurs to see what kind of mistakes you made, so we don't make them. So thanks for making them. We'll make some as well, but we'll teach them to.
Everybody makes mistakes. It's how you cope with them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting because that's also a change of mindset. Some people say, "Don't make too many mistakes. It's be careful with it." But you basically say everybody makes it, fail fast, and learn from it.
But the thing is, really like popular theory on a lot of YouTube videos and that type of thing is like fail forward, fail fast, and that only learns you failing.
Yeah.
But if you like we do in our module with the archetypes of failure from Paul Iske. If you analyze the failure, you can learn from them. That's actually what's meant. But you do have to reflect and analyze. Just the failing is not what gets you the learning. It's the reflecting on the failing. That's why at Global School we don't do a lot of theory testing. We have you do a lot of reflective papers because the core competence of an entrepreneur is reflecting. So if you don't reflect, you don't learn. So failing only is valuable if you reflect upon it and make sure it doesn't happen again. Or find the value. It's almost like a fortune cookie. You break it open and then you read the lesson that's in it. And that's what failing, why there is value in failing. That's also why Paul calls it brilliance in failure. It's the brilliance you only get if you reflect. Now, I had plenty of failure. I fail on a regular basis.
We're gonna talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how do you build in the reflective moments on yourself? Do you have tools for that, or maybe you say, well, like once a month I will reflect.
I put a lot of failure on the table, and I talk to my colleagues about it. If we fail, then people keep it for themselves, and then you don't learn. But by putting it on the table, often because you try to explain what happened, you learn while you explain.
Yeah.
Really
and you
often.
see the solutions.
That's why we do the reflective paper. When you describe it, you are somehow on the balcony looking at what happened. How did this occur? Why did that happen?
Yeah.
And then
taking a step back on your behaviors and your actions.
And I reflect the best when I talk to others about my failure. Not keeping it for myself, but then talking to others about my failure. Because if I don't, I keep it within and I don't learn from it. So I put it on the table and then we analyze.
How did you came up with that? Because a lot of people are afraid to share the failures because then that means you failed, or you're not good enough for what you're doing, or you're not the right person for doing it. There's a lot of people that fear the judgment of others.
Yeah, that's Edwin de Beukelaar, my mentor.
So that's
that's what we did. If you look at mentoring, the analyzing of failure, the reflecting on failure, and then coming up with creative, insane solutions to it, then there becomes then something happens. It's almost Disney.
Yeah, and you can create the brilliance of failure, literally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you understand what happened, you can come up with the solution once you know where you want to go.
Yeah.
Okay, and I wanted to ask you something. What would be your biggest and/most valuable failure for you?
My biggest failure, and that was the one that I started challenging if what I had built I should stop at all or completely go back and go to work for an existing consultant. I actually connected to consultants to see if I could work for them and just give up my whole entrepreneurial stuff because it was so heavy. What happened was that I got a really good opportunity at Rabobank doing professional and executive development, and in this case, professional development.
Okay.
I was making a lot of money with one client and 2 types of programs for that client.
Okay.
The experiences of the program were excellent, and we were more busy with the client, the person from HR, how to get more people activated than that we were thinking of stopping this. This was backed by the board.
Okay.
So we didn't see anything coming that the program would ever be stopped. We had groups of 18, 20 people, and the population we were training for was 3,600.
So there was a lot of
and we had only done
potential.
5 or 6 or 7 groups.
So you planned already all the lessons.
So we were thinking, well, it's more a thing. How many of these groups can we start a year? Than if we would proceed or not. The results were excellent. People were getting to better jobs. Were building their career. We're getting more effective. The leaders who sent people to the training were really enthusiastic. So and nothing there was like it was all blue sky and sun. And then I got one WhatsApp message telling me 9,000 people will be laid off at Rabobank. And I looked at the iPhone and I thought, holy shit, that's a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
And at Rabobank, it was common practice to find a solution elsewhere in the organization. This was the first time where people were laid off and were actually exiting.
And which year was that?
This was 2016, I think.
Okay.
2015, 16, more or less.
Okay.
But at the time, I was so the entrepreneurship 101 says you shouldn't become vulnerable by only having one client, right?
Yeah.
But if you know these lessons, and I teach them myself.
Yeah, of course you know it.
But the thing is, when you are in the race and you get to be creative and you are still developing new things for the future, but that's further ahead. And then your cash flow goes from a lot to zero, because what they said was, we don't know who these 9,000 are. We have to figure it out. Let's postpone the next 2 editions.
Aha. So they didn't want to train people who got fired, basically. No. Yeah.
So they postponed it, but I never saw this happening. And then my cash flow went from a lot to zero. But my cost didn't.
But did you add a lot of cost at the time?
Yeah, I had people employed. I had an office that I rented, and thank God I had Wilbur and Edmond, who were partner colleagues, who helped me out. And till this day, I'm still paying off of what they helped me out with. So the thing is, also having a warm network around you can be your safety net.
Yeah.
But at the time, I thought, so I know the feeling of, oh shit, I'm going bankrupt. How does that?
Crazy.
How does that impact the sports activities of my 2 kids? How does that impact the mortgage of my house I live in? How does that impact how people judge me? How does that? So I know I've been there. I haven't gone bankrupt because I pulled it off to reinvent myself through mentoring with Edwin again. And figuring out, talking to Timo, building my network, and solving the shit.
Yeah, and I want to a little bit go back to that time. You were bankrupt. You know, okay, basically I'm fucked up.
No, I was.
Or you were saved, and that's
no. The thing was that I wasn't formally bankrupt, but literally I was, but I didn't accept it.
Okay.
So I just kept going, and I was helped by partners to solve my cash flow, and I just kept working. And my thinking was, if I create value faster than I have to pay my invoices, I can get away with it. So I just kept doing revenue everywhere.
So you were
so I could pay off my invoices.
So you went from doing training for corporates to doing like personal
training to anybody who would want to. No, but my problem was that I got.
You train people soccer or what?
No. It was always entrepreneurship. So I started teaching internationally. I taught in Madrid at a business university. I still teach in Oslo. I started teaching at RSM, and at the time, from the Erasmus University, they told me from the department that I could no longer do the teaching for the RSM executive if I would remain within the department, because they wanted to see and make the decisions for me, and that just didn't work. So I in this difficult time, I said, well, I got to stop this job now. So the only security I had, I let go to free up the time to make sure I would reinvent myself. But it was tough.
Tough time. I can imagine. Like going from hero to zero in like a month.
And then back to owning a universe. I wouldn't call it a hero yet, but getting there.
I mean,
but how do you reinvent yourself in that kind of situation? Is that the time where you pick up a mentor and find a mentor?
I already had a mentor. Okay. But what I did do is, on the one hand, I didn't accept the situation.
What do you mean by that? Like, did you
kept going, right?
Yeah. If I would have given up, it would have been the easiest thing in the world. Give up, go bankrupt, and then go get a job, pay, and then have.
Are you like debt free when you go bankrupt?
There's issues and shit, but a lot of people just give up. They go bankrupt, and then they get new jobs, and then they
pay off their debt.
But if you have a limited, then you really have to screw up yourself before you become liable.
Okay.
And I had a limited, so I could have said, "Well, sorry guys," and then a lot of people in my network that helped me out to build what I had built would have had the hurt of my cash flow issue. That I didn't accept. So I kept going. So I didn't accept the fact that it had crashed, and I did look around. I looked at these high-end consultants, because I thought, well, what is the true thing? What's my purpose? I wanted to bring entrepreneurship into corporates.
Okay.
That changed into a changing entrepreneurship education. But at the time, I wanted to bring entrepreneurship into corporates. And I started looking at these high-end consultants to see what they were doing, because then they could give me boardroom access, and then I could even speed up my impact. But there was no consultant doing it right.
What do you mean by that?
McKinsey doesn't know anything about entrepreneurship and innovation, and neither do all the other consultants.
They are focused on what, like finance,
the model is dead, but that's a different podcast, I think.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, look, in the past, the McKinseys in this world, they had the research in the States, who was 5 to 7 years ahead of Europe. Everything that they could research there and then build a model, then apply it to businesses in Europe, and then Asia would be 5 or 7 years behind Europe, and they could do the same trick there. Then by that time, they would have new models from the States, apply it in Europe, and then bring it to Asia. Now we don't know where the better model is coming from. So
it can come from anywhere.
Exactly. Yeah. So now they don't have the time anymore to build the models in that way. So what they do now is analytics. So they do business operations optimization.
Okay.
And that to me is not entrepreneurship.
It's not.
No. But it's a choice of them, right?
Yeah. So they have to cope with shit just like we do. But so I started looking around for other ways to get to do my purpose, because to me also being an entrepreneur is not a necessity. The purpose is. So having an income, or I'm not one of those entrepreneurs that said I could never work for a boss again.
You could?
I could, of course. I think the boss would go insane, but I could. No, but I mean, if you find, for instance, if there's a big corporate that allows you to do what you want to do as a consultant, it settles the same purpose, and then you can do in an even larger scale what you had in mind. So to me, I don't judge people working for a corporate as not being entrepreneurial. It's just that a lot of times it's difficult to be entrepreneurial in a corporate setting.
Mm-hmm.
That's also why I teach corporates how to improve and become more effective. And I truly think that, if you look at that world's largest bottler, I think it's a true entrepreneurial company. And so they're proving that it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
But so I had to reinvent myself. So I started talking to consultants. I couldn't find a good consultant. And that is actually a blessing in disguise, because therefore I had to push forward and reinvent myself. So you start looking for alternatives, for solutions. It's discovery, testing, like we teach you guys, to come up with solutions and to find your pathway. And I found that through Hendrik and Timo. Hendrik was someone who I connected when Timo and I had met in October.
Okay.
Deciding let's start our own university and really create what we think is necessary to teach entrepreneurship. And then pull that part in from the entrepreneur experience and make an incubator and then flip it. Make the incubator more important than the degree. But still make sure it's a damn good academic program. Otherwise you don't get accredited.
Yeah.
So
that's the tricky part.
Yeah, but that's all settled now. Yeah. We are now accredited to 2025. So it worked out.
Until 2025?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way it works.
They check it every year?
They check it after 3 years. And then they check it after 6 and after 3. And then so it's you have a mid check and then the final check at 2025 where it has to be renewed. So now it's all set. And we can still keep improving. Because it cannot be fixed until 2025, of course.
No.
We're going to keep innovating and improving. But that's how the accreditation system works.
Yeah, okay. And because when you start your own school, of course you do it with Timo and Hendrik, you start your own school, and then is a point people need to pay you for that school. So your students need to pay because it's a private school. How do you build a trust? How do you get to the point that people wants to pay you for that school?
Openness and honesty.
Explain a bit more.
Yeah, we were really open about where we were at. Look at the first 8.
Mm-hmm.
We were open about the fact that the accreditation was probably going to work, but we didn't have it yet. We never told them we had the accreditation. We were open about it. And that trust was built up in the prior university. And also the experience. If you look at our team, there's a lot of experience and knowledge and there's value. Also, if you look at our teaching staff, the value that they bring to the table. And there's this, if you bring the right people into a room and you have the right approach and you can explain why you do what you do, then the people who think that this is something that, well, you guys made the decision.
Yeah, that makes sense then.
The openness and also understanding your customer, understanding what you guys need. We spend a lot of time understanding what startups need, and also being entrepreneurs ourselves, we know what you need. Like we just talked about, I went through the whole process.
Yeah, exactly.
I made the transition from a corporate job into my own entrepreneurship. I know the doubts, I know the fears. So to me, it's a surprise that people who have never been an entrepreneur teach entrepreneurship. That to me is ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Not whatsoever. But that's the way a lot of universities work. They find research more important than practical experience. Mm-hmm. And then they open with some guest speakers, but that's about it. But we truly understand our population and the people we're doing it for. And that's what I hope you sense, that when you talk to us, you see that we are interested in individuals and not in creating a cash machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're feeling it. Yeah.
That's the thing, and the openness and the honesty and also bluntness. We are open when something is unclear. We share that.